Well, thank you all for joining me today. We're going to look at discussing career planning and recruitment trends for 2024. I have kept the agenda quite simple for today. So we're going to have a quick introduction into who I am and what I do. I'll then go on to explain a little bit about the company I work for, which is Adissero. We'll look at the current job market over the last 12 months, what's been happening, what's been going on. It's been an interesting one. And then we'll take a look at some candidate frustrations within the job market. What are probably yourselves, but also candidates that I've been speaking to coming across. We'll then take a look into some of the upcoming trends for 2024 with a section on New Year, New Me. So it's pretty apt for January. And what can you look at to make yourself stand out as an exciting candidate to employers? Are there any skills or any training that would be worth looking into doing? And then we'll finish up with a Q&A session where hopefully I can answer some of your questions. So if we move into who I am Michelle Shoubridge. Some of you may have spoken to me over the years. I've been at Adissero since 2010 as the resourcing manager. Before this, I was in HR and held a generalist sort of HR role, but I always really, really enjoyed the recruitment aspect. I was always the first person in the office to put my hand up and say, yeah, put me forward for the interviews. I'd like to do that. Loved liaising with candidates, loved liaising with the hiring managers. So 2010 came around and I thought, right, I need a change in my career. What can I be doing? So I decided to focus my attention on recruitment. But I wanted to specialize in an area that interested me rather than just working at one of the generic sort of high street agencies where it's all a bit too manic for my liking, if I'm honest. And as nerdy as it sounds, discussing the English language and its quirks has always been of interest to me. And if I'm being 100% honest, I didn't know a thing about technical writing before I applied for the role at Adissero. All I knew was that I liked dealing with people, loved the English language, and above all, I'm a little nosy. So the idea of speaking to people to gather information and match them with the perfect role sounded like a great opportunity to me. Now, I've been at Adissero for 13 years and technology has changed so much over that time. And each time we get a new role in, it's like learning something new and exciting. We then get to pass that knowledge on to our candidates. And I think that the relationships we've built up with our candidates and clients is really what keeps this job interesting for so long. Outside of technical authoring, I'm married, love to travel, and have two very spoilt dogs who you can see at the bottom of the screen there, Milo and Daisy, whose worlds became complete when I started working from home full time because they love nothing more than hanging about in the home office with me all day. So that's a little bit about me. Let's move on to Adissero and what we do. So Adissero has been a specialist recruiter of technical communicators since 2003, helping many different companies and organizations from blue chips to technology startups find the best technical communicators for their technical and business information needs. We help companies in the UK and Europe, and sometimes further afield, recruit permanent and contract full-time, part-time technical authors from graduates and juniors right the way through to the expert levels, documentation managers, content strategists, knowledge-base managers, e-learning and instructional designers, editors, bid writers, user experience designers, and to be honest, anything else that falls under the technical communications banner. We love a challenge, so we're always happy to discuss something slightly different or out of the norm. We absolutely love what we do, which shows in how long all of us have been at Adissero. I think Rachel's the shortest serving member at 12 years now, so we're doing quite well there. And we're really proud of our long-term partnerships with our clients and candidates. They tell us that we're thorough, efficient, no nonsense and nice to deal with, which to be honest is always lovely to hear. So I thought we'd take a look at the current job market. How has it been? I'm not going to lie, it's been a challenging 12 months. And if you've been looking for a job, you'll probably already feel like it's been a slog. There are a few reasons that we've come across regularly when speaking to candidates and clients that I'll run through now. Firstly, there have been lots of well-known companies making large-scale redundancies. For example, Facebook, Google, Twitter, or X as they're now known. And when these big giants of the tech world do this, it makes other companies think that they need to do the same. It has such an unsettling impact on the market as companies then assess what they need to do to stay active and stay floating, really. The companies that haven't had to make redundancies and the ones that we're speaking to are almost scared of hiring because they're worried that they will overstretch and then need to downsize and follow in the footsteps of these larger companies. This is something we're seeing quite a lot where budgets are just being cut to try and future-proof the business. However, saying all of that, the workload is still there. And in most cases, that workload is still increasing. If you're working at the moment, you're probably on that end of it. You're seeing that the work is still there, it's still coming, it's still piling up. You just can't get those extra pair of hands to help you. So we speak to clients regularly at the moment who would love to get a role or two authorized, but things just haven't lined up where the powers to be are confident enough to expand their team. That in the market ends up with lots of candidates looking for opportunities, but not a lot of jobs available, which makes it harder to stand out, especially when you're going up against those who have been made redundant and who are available immediately to start a new role. It's not all doom and gloom. We are positive about 2024. We've ridden this roller coaster before. We've been on the ups, we've been on the downs, and we feel like we're coming back up again. So we've had lots of chatter about new roles getting sign off in Q1. So this is more a let's keep our heads up, get ourselves ready, and how can we make ourselves look like the best candidates going forwards, or how can we be the best candidates going forwards? What I wanted to look at first is some of the candidate frustrations that are fed back to me regularly. I'm 99% sure that you have encountered one, if not all of these in your job hunts recently. As I said before, it's a challenging market with a limited number of jobs, but a lot of candidates. And when it's like this, frustrations typically grow. We're seeing things from poorly worded adverts or those adverts with a long list of essential requirements. They just seem to be the norm these days. We've all seen them. We've all rolled our eyes at the ridiculous requests that are listed as an essential requirements. Clients appear to want a technical author to be a strong technical writer with hands-on development programming skills, have the ability to juggle while standing on your head and have a golden unicorn as a pet sometimes. Probably pushing it a little bit with those, but you can see where I'm coming from. These lists are getting longer and longer and longer and aren't always essential as people are saying. So these are very frustrating adverts to see. There are some technical writers with hands-on development skills, but there are also very, very good writers who know how to get the information out of developers to be able to create accurate documentation. In most cases, technical writers want to write and a developer wants to be a developer. It is very, very rare that one becomes the other. Another area is adverts with no salary. Now, for the record, we agree with everybody when they say it's frustrating when job adverts don't disclose salaries. We always try and include them in our adverts where unless we're specifically asked not to by clients. Because as a candidate, it's hard to know if a job's at the right level for you, if the salary isn't upfront and available or discussed early on. Having the salary listed saves time for both candidates and clients as it becomes more tailored with adverts and salaries. And adverts with salaries tend to attract a higher number of candidates because you feel like the company are being much more upfront, not trying to hide anything from you, and everything's out there in the open from the beginning. So that's another sort of big bugbear for people. The other one that's coming up a lot is LinkedIn messages. More and more candidates are receiving multiple messages on LinkedIn about their perfect job, when in fact, they just happen to have one of the words listed in their profile that the recruiter or AI is looking for. I had a candidate recently receive an invitation to apply for a job as a sous chef, stating that they would be in the top 10% of candidates to apply for this job. Now, they're still going through their CV and their LinkedIn profile, trying to figure out what on earth attracted this message to them, because there's obviously been one or two keywords that have picked up and nobody's looking at it, which can be so frustrating because if you're looking for a job, you want relevant, important jobs coming your way, not time-wasting opportunities. Although the AI chatbots on LinkedIn do seem to be getting more and more popular for companies to use, in most cases, it appears that they're using it more as a data grabbing exercise rather than an actual recruitment tool. I've had one candidate who arranged his whole interview with an AI chatbot. It seemed extremely sophisticated, got all of his details, his email, his personal mobile number, arranged an interview for a day and time, and then he's heard nothing from either the chatbot or the company since then. So these things are cropping up more often, and we're seeing it a lot. So they're just things to sort of keep an eye out in the recruitment process. Another area is the annoying and duplicated application processes. Lots of candidates are getting frustrated by the amount of companies that are not streamlining their application process. How many times have you found yourself having to enter all your personal details and your job history onto an applicant tracking system, only for 2 seconds later be asked to upload your CV, which has all of that information on there? There's also lots of companies asking you to fill in questionnaires that don't seem to be relevant to your application or the role. And a lot of companies are actually getting complaints at the moment over their recruitment and application process, because in some cases, this is putting candidates off from applying. A big bone of contention is when clients are asking candidates to complete long and excessive testing. You've probably all been asked to do testing as part of the interview process. We've had candidates who have been asked to spend a couple of days sometimes putting together an article, or spend time reviewing a large piece of documentation and highlighting the areas they would improve, and give suggestions on how they would do this, all as part of the interview process. Now, testing is always going to be an essential part of technical writing interview process, but it needs to be a streamlined experience and not a client getting a piece of work done for free. It needs to be relevant to the role and the candidate's experience. Gone are the days of testing a candidate, asking them how to make a cup of tea or something like that. Testing does seem to be improving, but don't feel like you can't question a company if what they're asking you to do feels more like a free piece of work than a test or a task. We would typically say anything up to an hour or two at a push is generally an okay test length, but anything beyond that is typically pushing it. Now, I've left this one to the end, which is the lack of feedback, because I think it's probably the biggest frustration that everybody faces. You spend your time applying, preparing, speaking to the client, only to be ghosted and never hearing anything back. It is something that we've tried to instill in all clients, that they need to provide a decent level of feedback, especially if you've been to an interview and spent time preparing. One day we'll crack it and get feedback for all, but it is unfortunately one of those areas that no matter how hard you try, it may not always be possible. Now, these are the main areas of frustrations that we are aware of, but I am sure there are many, many more, and I could have probably done a whole presentation just on candidates' experience of ghosting, because that is the biggest one. But I mainly wanted to include this section so that you know you're not alone. It is a tricky thing to find a job when you're coming across these frustrations regularly, and it can feel a little isolating, but you're not alone, and it's the companies that really do need to up their game. So let's move on to something a little more interesting and hopefully less frustrating, and take a look at the upcoming trends in tech comms. Before I start, I will say that I don't have all the answers, and there may be some other areas that are going to come up but these seem to be the most prominent. As technology changes and grows, the requirement for technical writers to have a better grasp on the developer level content also grows. It has been coming for a long time, but developer level content and those writers who can create API documentation or have some coding skills are always going to be popular. This goes hand in hand with an understanding of the docs as code approach. Gone are the days when a client asks us for a nice writer who can write about slightly technical things. Artificial intelligence is probably the biggest area of concern for a lot of people these days. And I do believe it's going to have a place in the world of technical writing, but I don't think it's going to take over and reduce the number of writers that a company will need. At the moment, AI can only pull information that is already available and still need someone to create that content in the first place. When it comes to AI writing tools, companies need to be cautious of potential security breaches. As I say, they can only pull information from what's already out there, which means that a lot of companies won't want their sensitive details to be made available to others. And therefore, technical writers should exercise caution if they're using an AI tool. We have, even in the last couple of months, had companies start to include clauses in their contracts that prevent any author using an AI tool to create content. So with all of that being said, I do believe it has a place. It's the way that things are changing and growing, and technology is heading in that direction. But I do think it has a place amongst technical writing, as it will free up technical writers, allowing them more time to focus on some maybe more strategic tasks, such as looking at content strategies and creating documentation much more tailored to the needs of specific audiences. Other areas that are coming up, machine learning, that's been around for a couple of years, but that's sort of stepping up, augmented reality, virtual reality, data science, again, all things that we are comfortable with. They've been around for a little while, but they are increasing within the technical writing world. And again, I think it's something that we will work alongside, and not something that is necessarily going to take jobs away from the writers. I also feel that 2024 is going to be the year where you can expand on your skill sets, get more involved in other areas of technical writing, such as content design, UX, UI writing, and content reuse.
Leverage.
So now that we have discussed the frustrations and the upcoming trends in technical writing, what can you do to make yourself stand out as the best candidate? One area to look into is upskilling. With the current job market looking for candidates with an understanding of newer technologies and methodologies, it would be good to familiarize yourselves with any tools that you haven't come across yet. Ones we are asked for most often are Palago. Some people are saying Paligo. I'm not sure which is the right one, so I'll just put them both out there. Madcat Flare, ASCII Docs or ASCII Docs, again, take your preference, and Markdown. Now, all of these offer trial versions that you can download for a month at a time in most cases. And when we're speaking to candidates looking at upskilling, we will typically say, we'll download a trial version and maybe use it to create a document or two that you can put into your portfolio that you're sending with your application. That then gives you some work samples that you can send out that aren't necessarily covered by an NDA, and also shows that you are able to use different tools as well. Now, I'm not saying this is going to be your golden ticket to a job, but it will show that you are taking a proactive approach and learning new skills and tools. It can also be included in your CV to help with the keyword searches. Now, I'm not saying you can put it in there, you've written 1 or 2 documents in a trial version. I'm not saying you can put it in there and say, I am an expert in Madcap Flare now because I've done this. But you can put it in there and say that you're familiar with it, so that you're not going to be missed when they're doing their keyword searches. You'll at least come up and give them a chance to look at your CV and your background, and hopefully get in the mix there. Madcat Flare also offer a free online training course, which could be worth a good look at. If you haven't got Madcat Flare experience, that's definitely one of the ones we're asked for most regularly by our clients. And I'd also recommend looking at some basic training in some new areas, such as coding languages, AI, machine learning, data science, all these things that are up and coming. Have a look and see whether there's anything you can do online, just to give you a little bit of an understanding, a little bit of a background into what's coming up. A good source of information is Codecademy and Udemy. They offer a lot of free or reasonably priced training courses in all of these areas. So it might just be worth having a look and seeing if anything takes your fancy there. If you are going to look at a programming language, I would probably suggest starting with Python. This is one of the more popular ones that we're asked for by our clients. And it's also a good starting point for other languages too. Another area to look into is reviewing your CV. Your CV is your first introduction to a company, so you want it to sell you in the best light. A common mistake is trying to squeeze too much information onto a CV. We see this happen all too often and always try to remind candidates, that CVs are a best bits highlights reel. They are not your memoirs. We all would love a book deal one day, but it's probably not the time or the place on a CV. So we suggest keeping your CVs short, sweet, relevant, and edited with a fine-tooth comb. It's always good to check your CV for consistent tone of voice and tense. I know I'm preaching to writers here, but these are things that get looked over when we're seeing CVs. CVs are built up over time, so sometimes these simple things can get overlooked and run the risk of being picked up by a hiring manager. Another area is formatting of dates. We see CVs starting with a dash between dates and then moving on to dates with a from and to section, going back to a dash at a later time. Or the other one is writing the months, some of them in full, some of them shortened as well. So just have a look and just check for consistency through those. Another big tip is to spend time preparing your application by tailoring your CV to the job and company you're applying to. We're all going to have a CV that is a starting point, but there will always be things that you want to include for different jobs. So it's worth double checking that you've got everything covered in that CV before you submit it. Have a look at the job description in detail. What are the companies looking for? What matches up with the experience that you have? Also, take a look at their website. Is the technical documentation available for public viewing? Can you match up the types of documents that you create to those that they are publishing as well? That's always really good things to sort of bring out in your CV or covering letter. Speaking of covering letter, I'd always recommend writing one, especially with the market the way it is at the moment, because it gives you the opportunity to express your interest in the role. Now, a generic cover letter is often quite obvious, so tailoring them to the role is a good chance for you to bring out your relevant skills and inject a little bit of personality to help you stand out from the crowd. As I've mentioned, there are lots of candidates applying, so why should a hiring manager look at progressing your application over somebody else's? All those little bits will help you stand out. Saying this, I'm always very happy to help with any CV questions. Take a look at your CV and cover letter, suggest any changes if you'd like me to. I see hundreds of CVs each week, so I know what stands out from the crowd. Feel free to drop me a message, as we also have sample CVs that have gone down very well with clients that are redacted, so we can send them out to anyone who's looking sort of a fresher way of presenting your details. Interview preparation. Now, we would always say that preparing for an interview is as important, if not more, than having the right CV and covering letter. Companies want to know that you are just as interested in them as they are in you. So do your homework, find out the basics about the company, have a look at the available documentation online, and then bring this up in the interview. It always is going to go down well. Our main piece of advice for interviewees is to put yourself in the shoes of the person interviewing you. What is it you would want to hear if you were recruiting? What would raise red flags or make you less interested in a candidate? It's always good to have some interview questions ready to ask at the end as well, but try thinking of questions that show your interest rather than generic ones you can find online. Questions such as, what do you expect me to achieve in the first 1, 3, 6, 12 months shows that you are interested in the career path at the company. But it also gives you an understanding of what they want from the person starting the role. Is what they're looking for achievable? Are they expecting too much, too little? Is it even something you want to do when you've got a bit more information about what the role involves? Another question to ask is about the biggest challenges of the role. Asking this helps to give you a really good insight into what they perceive the challenges to be. Is it just the learning curve that anyone would expect with a new job, or do they give away red flags as well? We would always say it's best to avoid questions around salary, unless obviously the conversation around salary hasn't come up already from their point of view, or it wasn't advertised on the initial advert. You would need to have it at that point. But if it's been covered, we wouldn't recommend sort of bringing it up too much at the interview. And other areas to generally avoid are the basics like holiday entitlement, sick leave, things like that. You want to focus on what you can do to show them you're the best candidate for the job, not that you're just looking at the benefits that are attached to the position. At the end of the day, the interview process is not only for the company to decide if you are the right person for them, but for you as a candidate to decide if the company is the right fit for you. So make sure you have any questions answered fully by the company so that you can make an informed decision should they come back and make an offer to you.